which hopefully I can ask Steph, you can be the first to comment on this. So Frank Gehry once said that 98% of everything that is built is pure shit. There is no sense of design, no respect for humanity, or for anything else. Do you agree? And if you do, what role do we have in undoing the shit?
I think that it's very subjective, and that's a very strong statement actually. Maybe because he's old, so he can say that. But I think that in the practice of architecture, clients are attracted to certain architects because of the values that they convey and the principles that they hold close to themselves. And I guess all of the people or everything has their own story. And buildings tell their own stories in different ways. And even if it was designed for something, perhaps the people that actually use the space or interact with the building may think differently. So I think it's really very subjective.
Well, having spent quite a lot of time in Europe, I understand you were in Germany and you were also in London.
Maybe here in the Philippines we can encourage people by thinking about architecture not just as design of buildings, but as creating spaces for people to interact, and what are the impacts of our buildings in the long run. So I think we need more public buildings, so more socially focused buildings like perhaps museums or social spaces that can attract a bigger amount of people to think about how the built environment affects them. Not just like commercially driven typologies.
A lot of times, it's the commercially driven projects that really have the budget to push for work that actually gets done. And we can argue a lot and say that, yeah, we'll try to make more institutionalized buildings like museums and all this, but these all have a cost implication. So maybe we can hear from Sudar what, how you convince your clients to really spend.
On our end, somehow, I think, well, for the firm that we're working with, I think we're maybe lucky to have had clients who are rich and who are in a way willing to spend. So somehow it has to begin from, I guess, the intentions internally as a client that they do want to spend. But we also realize that there is a shift from before, and our older partners would always tell us, nung panahon, like way back, they would say the clients had no budget, just really build the way that you wanted to, with exactly the way that you wanted to, and the architect's role there was to really direct everything and control everything to a certain high level of excellence. But they find that today, with all the market forces and everything, they find that somehow there is a budget, even if it is a bit high. So we've also had one client say, for example, that, okay, for the house, the sky is the limit, but my sky is only until here. So, I mean, even today, I think it's slowly becoming more of an issue, but I think the way that we still try to convince them is that there's always a bigger picture, there's always a larger thing that you're supposed to be concerned with, about maybe timelessness and sort of the future and sort of its long-term value. And in most cases, they see that and they are willing to fund it. So that's when it becomes meaningful also to us and to the client as well.
There are also occasions, though, that there are clients you do get to convince, but oftentimes it's not really about the budget, because you get people who are willing to spend for. How, as Filipino architects, as a representative of Jonathan Gan, how do we compete? How do local practices compete to stay relevant in that space?
Just to share with you, we've had a lot of experience working with foreign designers. We're working with American, British, Malaysian, Even now, we're in talks with a Japanese firm. So, in our experience, actually, when, let's say, for example, we've already completed a project with an American firm, we're speaking with actually Filipino designers working with the firm. So, I guess if we compare our practice with the foreign firms, I think, of course, with developed countries, everything is more advanced, training is more advanced, but slowly but surely, I think we're getting there because our practice is already maturing. We're venturing into globalization. We're opening ourselves to the ASEAN market. So there are programs with the government to maybe reach out also and help the practice prosper. I guess we are improving. Our architecture is improving, and I think most of the firms, if there are Filipinos also working with them, can also attest that there is talent that they also get from here. Yeah, sorry. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, and also, if I may also add, this is based on actual practice as well. With one project, we did the Robinson's Magnolia. We worked in collaboration with RTPL, the firm. They did the conceptuals, and then what's very good about the experience with working with a foreign designer, even if we were speaking with the principal, who's American, but the associates were Filipinos as well, the practice there is different. It's more, they're open also to working with us, and then they're also open to, collaborating, which is what I'm also teaching our staff, that we should be open to collaborating with other groups as well. And then when we actually shared our ideas to develop the concept and schematics, when we proceeded to design development, there were changes from the original design, which our consultants appreciated, our inputs. So I guess you can see that we have also what it takes to be able to work with them. That's why there are a lot of firms also. We do also outsourcing. So we've done outsourcing work for foreign companies, foreign firms. We've also done production work for large-scale overseas projects. So we can see that there is talent also here.
I'd like to add to that a little bit more. I do agree that we are sort of developing our local practice. But what I've found also with working with foreign firms is that there is still a difference between what they can bring to the table versus what we normally do. So, it exists. We have to accept that certain things about the practice, the way it's done here, is different from the way it's done abroad. And we asked the client, sort of one big developer, point blank, asking him directly, why don't you hire local architects to do the schematic design and take the project from beginning to completion? And he says, primarily, the architects that we have locally, they feel, the developers feel, that none of them can give the same level of quality, same level of technique or technical skill set that some of the other firms have, like for example SOM or PPF or any others. And working on the project that we are working with, I found that to be true. There's truth to that, the idea that they are ahead. It's primarily to do with their orientation as wanting to lead the process. So the foreign firms, they have an orientation that they want to develop something, they want to do the research, they want to push something forward, and have the sort of the skill set to be able to follow through with it. So, for example, SOM of course has their own in-house engineers, which think about the mechanical systems, structural systems, push it forward, and that's what they translate and that's what they bring to the table. Whilst locally, I think we might be a little bit more fixated on the architectural aspect. I think that's something that we can still have room to improve in.
Well, what is it exactly that you think is lacking within our industry that results in that type of level of quality that we're producing at?
I think primarily it's the will to lead. I think that's basically it. Like we think that basically we're just following And I think the mindset has to change where we have to be more of a leader. And to lead, it's quite simple. It's basically take the first step. Somehow, sometimes we feel like we wait for other people to take the first step or show us the way, and then we follow. And that's the problem. So we're always going to be following.
Maybe we can hear from Robert Mirafuente as to how the institutions can actually help make this happen.
Well, in BRC, I'm in charge of actually foreign architects who wants to practice in the Philippines, and we have always this problem about reciprocity. Under the Philippine Constitution, it says that for any foreign architects to be able to practice in the Philippines, they should have some kind of reciprocity law in their own country. So Filipinos can actually go there and practice. And so you can imagine that there is actually no country anywhere that actually allows Filipino to sign and seal in their country. Right? So in the same thing that we don't allow them to practice here. So that's the reason probably that most of these foreign architects can only do conceptualization, and they cannot go beyond conceptualization. The local architects now becomes the architect on record, and their responsibility lies on developing the design, doing the construction documentation until the supervision of the work during construction. It's very strict under the law that foreigners are not allowed to do that. With special cases, for example, like they can ask for special temporary permit if the skills that they have cannot be found in the Philippines. Very, very special skills. Maybe they are, I don't know, nuclear plant architect, right? And cannot find architects here in the Philippines who can do the same level of skill. Yes, maybe we can provide some special temporary permit. But the rule is that should we provide them this STO, we call STP, we call, then it's very important that he has to have some Filipino assistance, because we are very sensitive to technology transfer and knowledge sharing. So while he comes here to the Philippines, then it's his responsibility to be able to transfer his knowledge to a counterpart Filipino architect. So by doing that, we're actually developing our local architects.
Do you not feel that this is too protectionist in terms of not allowing people to practice? Because, for instance, the RIBA architects can practice in Hong Kong and in Singapore as well, because they allow such reciprocity, there's a better exchange of ideas. Do you think that the Philippines, in inherently not allowing others to come in and practice, we're being too protectionist and we're not benefiting from an exchange of ideas?
I definitely agree with that. But to be able to do that, we have to change the Philippine Constitution. And it's regulated. For example, like any profession in the Philippines is regulated by laws. So even as an individual, me, having worked abroad for many years, I know the benefit of being able to open ideas. And if you find out, for example, like I work in Singapore as well. So in Singapore, the design team basically are all foreigners. I'm the only Filipino there. There's an American, there's an Indian. So basically we are three. We're designing major buildings while I was in Singapore. The same thing happens when I was in Australia. We're doing Darling Harbour, and we're doing Queen Victoria Mall and the Harborside Marketplace, and also Manly Wharf. And the design team comprises of foreigners. There's a British, myself, there's an Hungarian, and a Singaporean, a Malaysian, and a Thai. So it's amazing. In the design team, there's no Australian, and the Australian are basically are handling all the documentation, and of course the business side of it, the one who talks with the client. While I personally agree that we should open up, we are actually restricted by the Philippine Constitution. This reciprocity is very important that we have to adhere. Now, you're talking about Singapore and Hong Kong. As far as I know, that architects that go there actually are not, if they actually apply for visa, it's not actually the work is as an architect. In fact, if you look at it, it's actually like a technical person. Because to be able to be given the title of an architect in that country, therefore you have all the rights and responsibilities to be able to sign and seal documents, which is the basic criteria to have that kind of title. It's the license to be able to practice. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we are because I'm one of those who are against about reciprocity. So it's difficult for me to explain to you about Constitution, and me personally is against that, right? But we need a whole ball game to change that. That means Congress, I think it's a constitutional convention, because it's constitution, right? We need to change that, and hopefully we will have that convention soon, constitutional convention, and this will be part of it. Yeah, so, and as I said, the Board of Architecture is doing some resolution, and one of these resolutions is to do away with this reciprocity, but of course without going against the law, but we're doing something that in the event there is no such reciprocity in that country, then we will allow them to work, provided that, so we have some guidelines for them to do. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll be able to pass that before the year ends. Yeah.
Hello. I'm just stepping in, obviously a bit of a not knowledge of the real Philippine markets, but from the outside, coming from London, you spoke about protecting. I actually see it slightly different, because what you're protecting is that us, and this is against me coming from abroad, but we can come here and design. That is the fun part of the project, and the local just do the delivery of it. That is a great moment, but you almost don't give a chance to the country to become the designer, the international, and be asked from London to call you amazing concept designer from Philippines to come and do the concept design for us. And maybe the reciprocity, obviously I don't know much about and this one, but maybe, you know, if instead you almost push it to become more extreme and say, or you cannot come to do the concept design, or you can come, but then one of you has to stay all the way through, collaborating with the local. That is where the knowledge will be shared. And that is where maybe many foreigners will drop it, because it's not convenient to do the delivery, and the developer exploit the delivery on the local in making big price for the concept, and then reduce all the other collaboration. And I think that is what is killing the opportunities. And regarding the fact that you brought the point, why we calling the foreigners, why we are better somehow. I think it's the charm. The other side is always better than what you can do inside. Yes, they might have higher quality, but you mentioned Article that I worked for, KPF I worked for. You mentioned big practice. There's 1,000 people working for this office. They're not really comparable to a local office that want to emerge. We will never beat, even if you are in London against them, you still don't beat them. So taking this big player out of the equation, I think the sky is not the limit. I think it's belief that yes, you are far away from other countries, but we have Google. You can Google what other people do. All the plans are online, the construction details are online. If you really research like we do during university, you can learn so much about the project and making it yours. And then bring that innovation as part of your design. Unfortunately, at the beginning of any office, you have to be competitive, and we do accept any type of collaboration, and maybe it's not the design one, or they ask you to, but they don't pay you for. That is what can happen. But I think it's about believing that you don't need to go to New York to be a good designer. You can be a good designer anywhere, and bringing that with you.
Add to that, there was a question a while ago that Rika gave, and just following up on that, I think that there needs to be kind of an awakening in the Philippines of the role of the architect as part of the social fabric of the space, the community, the country. And a lot of minds have to change in that way. I think I used to work in London as well, and I used to work for Norman Foster. And of course, he has a name for himself. He's a famous guy. And what the clients, when the clients go to him, it's always because of the practice, putting in this kind of sustainability story and a social aspect that I think governments in Europe or outside the Philippines focus a lot on what kind of society we want, what kind of future do we see our people having. And we as architects, everybody here, I think it's our opportunity to ask that to our government, to our clients, not just as somebody drawing a building, but somebody that can make a difference. And that kind of belief that you're talking about and that understanding, it's not enough that we just research, but we have to understand our role as architects in this society. And the times are changing. Things are becoming different than before, I think, and people have a bigger voice. And I think in spaces like this, it can create this conversation, which probably before we didn't have.
On that, I just remember before you mentioned I took it out. The fact that we would like to not have the sky as the limit, but then there is the budget or there is the client limitation. Again, I think I might start the movement because I'm a big believer in you have to believe in the dream, even if today is not possible, but it happens everywhere. And every day we face that. And again, obviously, unfortunately, we have to pay the bill at the end of the month. And if the client asks you to do A and you don't really agree, you might just do it because it's been asked. But if we believe strongly, the option of exploiting the site just out of commercial revenue, I just don't put it on the table. I don't give it to you. Once I see that you can make more money in a certain way, obviously they go for it. But it's the part of the architect responsibilities I don't believe in the option and I don't show it to you. And I show you something that has still a balance, and that is how much we should invest in our own education to become so good and actually achieving the maximum efficiency on creating commercial revenue, but still delivering something that has a purpose. Everything we do is a place where people will interact with. So if we start with that motto, the hope is that one day we are so strong that the developer doesn't dictate that, and that there's a way to do it. Because making a good project that makes a good revenue for the client doesn't need to be a bad project. And in London, we have many offices that they work with low budget, and it's almost becoming a trend. You win, you're still delivering and winning awards in low budget projects.
I think that's both very good input from Bella, right? Bella, from Bella and Steph. And I want to bring it back to what Robert was saying earlier, is keeping, leaving the concepts just to foreign architects and not allowing them to input their practice. I mean, I understand you have to make it adaptable to local building codes and building regulations, but at the same time, do you feel that we are by subjecting the Filipino architect only to AOR work, but not the conceptual part, we're also condemning the ability of the local architects to really raise the level of thinking and critical thinking and thought process in that sense. Maybe we can hear from Angelo. Really design conceptual work. How would you be able to, really make it such that we push forward for the Filipinos doing not only the AOR work but also the entire process?
I think it's a general frustration for all architects, not to demonize foreign consultants, but we know that we can deliver first world practices in our designs, but we aren't given that opportunity to deliver them because much of the corporations that do big projects can go to foreign consultants. So our experience in competitions really drove us to actually try to study more that we were in practice. I think I want to ask the Sir Rob, how would say the PRC help in protecting the practice of architecture, most especially for us local counterparts?
Are you asking me personally, or you're asking PRC? PRC. As I said, the position of PRC is that they need to comply with the law. That's the position. But if you ask me, we should open up. That's how I look at it. Now, in fact, slowly we're opening up. That's why we have these ASEAN architects. The concept of ASEAN architects is collaboration among ASEAN countries. Once an architect is registered as an ASEAN architect, basically he can now go to any of these 9 or 10 ASEAN countries to be able to practice there, but in collaboration with a local architect. So a Cambodian architect can collaborate with a Filipino architect doing works in Cambodia. Same happens to a Singaporean coming over to the Philippines. But it has to be collaborative work. He cannot just come in and do it on his own. It has to be done collaboratively. So we're moving into that direction. In fact, we have this Congress coming next month. This month, April 26 and 27. It will be the first ASEAN Architect Congress. Holds true to any kind of practice, whether you're a small practice or big practices. The client will only get you because he trusted you. That's the only way things work. So it's the same token as why are big clients getting foreign consultants? Because he feel he can trust the skill of that particular foreign consultant to do complex works for him. When we talk about collaboration with foreign architects, normally this is not done on the small scale buildings, like residential work or small commercial works. We're talking about complex projects. And that's the only time that client will be motivated to for whatever reason, motivated to get foreign consultants. And that's not only in the Philippines. If we look at the iconic buildings in the world, you'll be surprised that most of them are done by foreign architects. A good example is Sydney Opera House. It's done by John Utzon. He's not even Australian, he's European. You come closer, for example, like Marina Bay Sands Resort, it's done by American. And you have Petronas Tower, it's done by Cesar Pelli. It's not Malaysian, right? In the Philippines, we have a iconic building, cultural center of the Philippines, done by a local architect, Leandro Locsin, right? Tayo lang may ganon, di ba? Hindi naman tayo. There are many like that. But if you go around the world, you'll be surprised that a lot of these landmarks, iconic buildings are not done by local architects, right? Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, it's done by Frank Gehry. And, you know, the Spanish architects are very good. But why get a foreign architect when they can do it themselves, right? So, again, it boils down to the clients having the trust that this particular architect can do the job for him, right? It boils that down there. It's not something like he's better than me or he's better than the local architect. I think it boils down there. So anyway, moving forward, that's the reason why Congress and the Senate passed this CPD law, the Continuing Professional Development. And that is because the government knows that sooner than later that there will be this globalization, there will be borderless. And Filipinos architect, we are one of the biggest OFW, we are one of the biggest exporters of professionals in the world. So, but then we have to level up. We have to level up to a level that we know we will be globally competitive. So that's why this law was passed last year. And the idea of this law is to assure that future Filipino architects will be at par with the global standards. And yeah, so did I answer your question about how So if it's a small practice or a medium-sized practice, actually at the moment there is nothing to be afraid of because this collaboration work between foreign architects and local architects are basically restricted on complex and big projects. Am I right? In your firm, how is it?
Yes, we do practice with larger firms, particularly for very complicated and very large-scale projects. But there are stories of even houses being done by foreign architects locally, and I don't think that's a problem at all. I actually enjoy that, except that you were asking this if it does happen. So like Rebecca Plaza did a house in the Forest Park, so it's happening that way as well.
In the end, it's the client right who he will choose as his leading architect. It's still the client's right. We have no control over that.
I'd like to add something. Based on our practice, most of our clients, they prefer getting foreign designers because on the retail aspect, the competition here, you can see there are a lot of malls, so the competition is really tough, stiff. So with our clients, they prefer getting foreign designers for large-scale developments because they wanted also to give an international flavor to their development. So to be at par with international projects, international retail or shopping centers, they get these foreign designers. But the fun part also for our practice is with working with these groups also actually helped us in a way because we are also learning from them. So I agree that if we open up our market, maybe, of course, it's a little bit scary because the competition already here is really tough. And then if we open our market and we're adding more to that competition, but I think it's really a challenge because I also attended a talk by the Singapore Institute of Architects, and then they mentioned that I think 40, 50 years ago, they were like the Philippines, but their practice was like that. But when they opened up, of course, it was a little bit scary to start. But when they opened the market and they collaborated with these foreign consultants, foreign designers, they were also able to develop their practice. So now, of course, they're progressing, And hopefully the country will be same as well.
Yeah, I just want to add about the foreign hiring of foreign architects. I'm not disagree with hiring of foreign architects, but some examples like in Japan, like National Stadium, Zaha won the competition, and our office is right by that area. And I've been to that stadium a lot of times when I was small, and when I see her design, I'm not saying the design is bad, but as being a local, like grew up in that area, that area is very sensitive, and that area is like, we don't need that very gigantic icon architect. So I'm trying to say that maybe if there's a sensitive areas like in Philippines, that in the future there might be a lot of competition that's only invited for local architects. Because sometimes if you ask foreigner architects to do a schematic design, it's really a risk that you wouldn't know how much research they've done, and there's some sensitive parts that you really have to be there for a long time.
Changing ideas between his firm and his foreign counterpart. Definitely there will be a lot of knowledge sharing from that, and you will learn a lot from that. And the thing is, you know, as a regulator of the practice, we were approached by many local architects as well. And recently, maybe 2 months ago, and I hope they're not here, and the top 10 architectural firms are actually asking us to what can we do to stop foreign practice. Yes. All right. And the reasoning because it's actually eating on their fees, while the client is willing to pay surmountable amount fees to these foreign architects, and without bargaining with them, whatever that goes to those foreign architects, they lessen it to the fees of the Filipino architects, and that's the real thing about it. You know, that's why on that level, there are top 10 architectural firms, and they're so worried about opening up the country to, you know. But as we said, you know, I'm one of those who are very open with this idea, opening it up. And my position there is very clear. I said that by opening it up and allowing these foreign architects to be able to ask very high fees, and the client are willing to pay for it, then definitely that's good for Filipino architects. Why? Because now we can also raise up our fees. Maybe 10% lower, but definitely we'll be able to raise up our fees, right? If you're getting X percent now, and they're getting times 10, you can always offer 90% of their fees. And there are a lot of clients who are willing to get discounted fees. So that's my point of view. That's on top of the advantage of being able to learn many things from our foreign counterparts, right? Because they might have some ideas and technologies that we never thought of that can be transferred easily by them physically present in this country.
I'm going to make reference to Nokia. So I'm pretty sure that everybody here in the crowd at one point had a Nokia phone, right? Right? No? Right? No? Well, majority at least. Come on, guys. 5110, 3210. Anyway, when Nokia closed down, on the last day of their operations, they said, one of the things that they said was, we didn't do anything wrong, we just didn't keep up. So do you not feel that that is something that we are doing in closing doors to all these foreign architects? We're not able to keep up, especially with the ASEAN integration. I mean, I'm going to be a bit controversial here and give an example, and that's me. I studied abroad, I worked in the UK, and I moved back, and I'm practicing now professionally. But I don't sign my own documents. I do all the design work, but I don't do the production work. But I still have somebody else doing that for me. And in many ways, it's very ironic because now I just call myself sorry, I'm opening myself up to fire, but I'm a design consultancy and not an architecture firm. But that's something that's very common. We get Thomas Heatherwick in the UK, not an architect, industrial designer. Pardon? Oh. Me? Yes. No, we are a design consultancy. We are incorporated as that. But anyway, before we go into fire, but I mean, you get Thomas Heatherwick. That's why I'm going to take this opportunity. I mean, why? But see, in order to be able to keep up, what I'm doing is I'm back at school. I'm back at National University, completing my requirements, not because I don't have the education, but because I have to do Filipino, I have to do PE, I have to do Paul Gov, which is fine. But is there not another way that we can allow the profession to open up without having to send them back to school? Because we will fall behind.
Well, to bring my own experience. I'm Italian, I studied in Italy, and then I moved to London. Now, because till today we still belong to Europe, I'm an architect. I'm an architect, and to be recognized, you actually do go through a process. You're not automatically recognized. So they do check the list of your exam, and they check the university and the program, and only if that matches. So it's not about country, but it's about the university, your specific path. Then you get recognized. If you don't, then you have to do an integration year to be accepted. So you going back to school, it would have happened in UK if we would have done the reverse.
Understandably, but in the UK, they have programs that allow you to acquire reciprocity without having to go back to do your Bachelor of Science. That's different. So here in the Philippines, I have to go back to school, which is completely fine. I mean, it's fine. It's part of the process, you know. You have to do it. But can we not do it in another way? Can the PRC not allow it to happen in a different way?
That's why I have second thoughts before I accept this invitation. I know all the questions will be bombarded to me. I certainly sympathize with you regarding going back to school. But you know, to be able to become a licensed architect, you actually have to go into these very rigid and difficult examinations. And these examinations is a test whether you understand many things about the local condition, local environment, the pertinent laws, professional practice, legal issues, the building codes, Philippine history. All of these are actually given during the exam. So we have to be assured that besides your foreign education, are you prepared to practice locally as a Filipino architect? And that's why you have to go back to school. But of course, you can always go to CHED, all right? CHED, I think you have tried that, right? Yeah. You can go back to CHED and get permission and let them allow you to take the exam. If after some kind of assessment, evaluation, they think you are ready for it. So if they don't find that you are ready for it, then they will ask you actually to do parts of the program at bachelor's degree so that they can be also assured that you are ready. Now, let's go back to what you asked me, right, earlier about why about not opening up. As I said already earlier, I personally is very open with you, all right? You know, I was appointed as a board commissioner maybe just more than a year ago, and I'm not very sure how I was appointed because I had no connection with the government at all. So, so maybe it's God's will, and it just happened that my way of thinking is so different from my predecessors. And the way I think is that we have to move forward, we have to open up our boundaries, especially for architecture, because architecture is a creative industry. And as a creative industry, we have to assimilate as much ideas as possible. And yeah, so hopefully that everyone will be ready for that big globalization that will follow soon.
So this is open to anybody, this next question. There are 39,000, somewhere around that number, right? 39,000, 40,000 registered Filipino architects. And just recently I came from a conference in Indonesia, and one of the things that they pointed out was in Malaysia there are only about 2,000, and in Singapore even less than that. So how is it, or why, where we are producing that massive number of architects, but why is it that we have yet to produce one great Filipino architect who can design, say, you mentioned earlier that the Marina Sands in Singapore was designed by an American, and Zaha Hadid did the Peak in Hong Kong, and Norman Foster did the airport in Hong Kong. We're producing this many number of architects, but why is it that we're unable to produce really at the level that is at the global scale? Maybe we can hear from Sudha.
Sorry, but I think I'd have to disagree. We've possibly, I think we have created them already. They exist. Well, I don't want to say it's like our firm, Leandro Locsin, the father. They did the Palace of the Sultan of Brunei, and basically it's the most important building that they are going to ever build there. I mean, that's what they thought at the time. And they hired a Filipino architect to do that there. So if you're talking about creating iconic buildings for a different culture, it has happened. So we're saying maybe it can happen again, or more than.
Go on.
I'd like to add something. So our firm, we actually do conceptual architecture. And we're lucky to have clients that are very open-minded in terms of explorations of different kind of typologies. One of our projects, we were actually asked to do the concept architecture because at that time I had two other foreign partners who were also here in the Philippines. Basically, we did a facade system for this developer, and they liked it so much that they decided not to get a foreign architect, to just hire us to do the whole facade in the Philippines. It's a facade consultancy, but I'm a practicing architect. So we were able to do that, and it sold really well, and it's very successful visually. However, the developer, or the ones that sold the project, only put the two foreign consultants in the credits page. They didn't put my face in, nor did they mention the company that we have for marketing. And I asked them, I actually confronted them, and I said, I think I was the one who sealed the deal. I'm the one signing all the documents. I'm the one signing with you. I came to you the first meeting, and at the end of the day, you put two different people on the page. In fact, they even decided to hire an actor to impersonate one of the people, one of my foreign partners, to talk about the project in their marketing kit. So I was very upset. And they answered me and they said, we wanted to have a foreign take on this project and we didn't want it to look local. It was in an email. So what I'm trying to say is that maybe we're ready, but the market might not be ready, or the developers might not be ready. And it's possible to do conceptual architecture. We've done it. We're just not credited for it. No, I mean, we're credited at some certain point, but it's also a question of, is the market really ready? I mean, as you said a while ago, the commercial aspect of things wants to sell a product as an international product, and they want to put a diverse uh, diverse portfolio of people working on it, not just locals. So that's, I think, we throw that back to the industry if they're really open to actually having local people.
Actually, yeah. With regards to the local firms, I mean, there are a lot of big, top caliber local firms here. Maybe just to add, I mean, we have great architects. Architect Leandro Luxin, we've studied the works. But basically, maybe it's also our attitude. You mentioned a lot of firms, did architects, PIG, PR Engels, these are really young, I mean, top performing now. Those are really big, large-scale firms. And I mean, in our industry, if we are going to compete, we have to actually maybe change the way we do things. Because these groups they have 5 offices around the world, they have like 1,000 architects working with them. When they do concepts, they work in teams, large-scale teams. So, I mean, it doesn't, if you're just one architect conceptualizing large-scale developments, it's difficult to compete with these firms. So that's what I'm teaching actually a lot of my younger staff, how to work together, how to collaborate, because we throw everything on the table, R&Ds, and then we pick which is the best. If I'm working alone, how will I know if my ideas are the best ideas if I don't work with somebody? So maybe it's also our attitude. If we learn to work together, we learn to collaborate, maybe we can stand a bigger chance of competing in the international market. But like you said, of course, that's a long way going there. Right now, the local industry is looking at international firms because it's, of course, one thing is also marketing. Here, if the local market sees that, oh, this is done by BIG, this is done by Zaha, the architects, or KPF, SOM, it looks and it presents itself in a notch, several notches higher already if you compare it to just the local firm. But slowly but surely, I see that the next generation, if we maybe progress, change our attitude, how, and then work together, learn from each other, then slowly we may reach that.
Is it not then the opportunity to maybe change the location? Maybe it's not about being Filipino and become famous in the Philippines, but it's about being Philippine and become famous somewhere else. Zaha Hadid was based in London for almost all her life. They never allow her to have a building for 20, 30 years. And she was already a star architect around the world. But foreigners were thinking, oh, she's so cool, and UK were like, sorry, we don't not interested. So in the occasion of being referred, in your own country didn't work, but maybe if you go to their country, you would be the only one in that panel to speak.
I'd like to say that that's a good opportunity for Filipinos to think differently. Maybe, yeah, I mean, we should think out. I mean, we can't obviously change how people think, how commercial people think, how minds work here. But I guess we have to look at opportunities outside, and that's exactly what Zaha did. And she's amazing for that.
Just like to add a little bit. I think it's possible though to change the way people do think locally. It's possible. I think it just takes these events that we try to do and try to sort of spread out our educational sort of propaganda, if you want to call it that, or sort of an agenda that we put out there. And I think it's possible to sort of change minds, and it happens. We've seen it happen, even however slowly. So I think it's possible.
Yeah, that idea of international. Basically, business people think that anything that's international is one notch higher. So, of course, if they're into this business, they want to show their prospective customers that they are one notch higher. But going back to what Conrad said about those international firms being very big, they're really, really big. And if you look at the local practice, you don't see this kind of huge firm. I think the most we have is about 100 plus, right? And we don't exceed 200. Is there any firms that has more?
Asha, they're about 500, 3 to 500. Yes, quite big.
Right. But based on the records on DRC, is that this is amazing data. Is that one of the most hard filled position in the Philippines are architects. Very hard to fill architects. Why? I guess they're all going abroad. It's very, very hard. In fact, you can talk to many architects and they say that they can put them on classified ads for weeks and months and they couldn't find any qualified people to do the job. Especially those who have like at least 10 years professional practice. And many of the young architects after getting their license, actually plan to go abroad already. So that is the sad state of the profession in the Philippines. So recently we talked with Dole, and Dole has the same data, and it's really, really difficult to fill up these positions. So in fact, it's so difficult that one of our proposition is to open up to foreigners. Baliktad. It's strange, right? We are so many, and yet we cannot fill up those positions to a point that we will open up to foreign architects to come over and hire as employees.
Oftentimes, a lot of architects go abroad because the pay does not compare. Where, say, starting salary here is 12 to 15,000 pesos, where out of college in London, you would get paid somewhere about 1,400 pounds, which is 100,000 pesos. That is also because the profession is not really as respected anymore. Developers don't put, well, no, I think that's too much to say. But there isn't as big as a value into the architectural profession now as there used to be back then. Back then at the height, really at the prime of, not to say that you guys aren't doing very well, but at the height of Locsin, that was during the Marcos time when really Imelda was really putting a lot of money, pushing for great architecture, great buildings. The profession was respected, and if we look back into history, there was a time when the architectural profession was one of the most venerated. It was a top-paying profession, and right now you get about that much starting. So maybe we can. Are there developers in the crowd? Maybe we can hear from a developer. Anybody? None. None. Okay. Developer. Will. As a developer, how would you get? Yeah, he's a part-time developer. No. In general, like as architects, how do we convince really the developers that there is value in what we are doing and the returns are much higher than what they initially see?
I think this is quite an interesting perspective. In Italy, we suffered the same with too many architects, too many actually professions that can sign a project, not just architect, engineer, and the technician. And so you are one of a million. And as soon as you go abroad, they're like, oh, you are an architect. You're thinking, yeah, nothing special, but it's still recognized and they give you value like, oh my God, you study and you have some specific skills. The answer is not easy of, how can you convince a developer to pay correctly? But how it works in this country where they pay more, they actually being brave to say no to a client that doesn't pay. That is the difference. And I was shocked because in Italy you just do everything and many, many things also for free, just in the hope that in the future you get actually a project. And this doesn't happen too much in London. Maybe because they have a global vision. So if I don't get the project in UK, I just go abroad. But the big position that they have to change the developer is just actually for their money. I'm not doing it.
I'd like to add to that. In the UK, the REBA is really strong. I mean, they're really protect the industry. They make sure that the knowledge and the information is disseminated between all aspects of the developer, the architects, the users, and it's very inclusive in that way. And I think this can be an opportunity that the Philippines can fix that system in terms of the organizations to protect architects in terms of their fees.
Actually, I would like to add to that. This is, I mean, one of our biggest problems because we're trying to sustain a growing firm. So it's difficult to sustain a growing firm and keep all the talented key people if we're not able to charge the right fees. Now, the problem with our industry is that, yes, there are a lot of architects, but I mean, the projects, there are not that many projects. So the competition is really tough. So, I mean, if you charge standard rate so that to help you sustain your operations, and then there are other firms willing to, offer the same with a lower fee, how can that be?
Maybe it's time that the organization set a standard fee, and that all the fees can be transparent with each other, so all the firms can have an equal footing.
Actually, there is a standard fee. I think
There is a standard professional fee. Actually, we passed. Hello. Hello. Yeah. Actually, we passed a recent resolution accepting the standard of fees compiled by the United Architects of the Philippines. But the thing is, would anyone comply with that standard fees, right? So, in fact, you'll be surprised how low the local architects can give fees, right? So, if you don't accept, basically you lose the job because of fees, not because of you're a better architect than the other, except, of course, here comes the trust thing I'm talking about earlier, is that the client really trusted you, and he's willing to pay for it.
Just wanted to add that I think we're so obsessed with fees right now, and you know, and I'm not a developer, but we do build some properties, and well, I think we would like to compete because I don't get foreign architects, and we're selling in at least our respective cities where we're putting our properties, probably the most expensive properties there. So in a way, I think, but it's nice to learn. I'm actually like talking to Isabella about working on something together, and it's actually much. I think it's fun to learn from other cultures. Diversity enriches, and so practice should not be too concerned. I think rigidity is quite the enemy of creativity, and in a lot of ways, we should be more flexible in our practice.
Also, I'd like to add going a little bit back to fees. It's funny because what we found in our practice that actually interior designers are able to charge much higher and actually get the price as a sort of a standard locally. So, meaning clients are actually willing to pay a certain standard, except it's still a question why they are able to do that, but it's possibly because, like you said, the interior designers are willing to say no. A lot of them are, a lot of them do. So when they charge a fixed certain amount of fee, clients accept because it's sort of a standard. I think, yes, you're right, there are too many architects, but what we found recently is that basically there's too many architects in Manila. We're crowding around for the same projects, but actually going out to Visayas, to Mindanao, there's a lot of development happening there, and there are not enough architects.
Well, I'm not very sure if it's that if there are really not enough architects, no? Because as I said, that's the problem with many firms. Maybe, yeah. And she mentioned earlier there's about 40,000 registered architects, but the 40,000 includes even the one that's passed away, or the sick leave, the old, that's the 40,000. But those who are regularly renewing their license, that's only about 11,000. So it's only 11,000. So we assume that maybe another 10 to 15,000 are actually not renewing, and therefore either they are abroad or probably doing other things. But they want, doing other things. Remember, once you have the license, it stays with you for life. So in PRC, that's why the record stays there, right? It will never be changed. It's there, the record. So 40,000 is still there. So we don't have records of how many actually died and how many is not practicing, whatever. What we have is that we know there are about 11,000 renewing it every 3 years.
So I think that's it for the for this panel. There's been a great amount of fantastic ideas that have been exchanged here. So thank you so much to all the speakers and all the panelists. If there's anybody who wants to share a few last words, please. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you. Now we can all go to lunch. I think Matt has a few words.
Thank you everyone for participating. We'll be giving you some certificate of appreciation. Please stay here and we'll take a picture together. Thanks.
Excuse me. Sorry.